should have kept driving. I should have ignored the vacancy sign flickering in the rain. But the storm was too violent. The wipers on my car were slapping useless streaks across the glass, and when the lightning split the sky, I saw the outline of a squat little building on the side of the highway. An old roadside motel, the kind with peeling paint and buzzing neon, the sign sputtering the word vacancy like it was on its last breath. I pulled in without thinking, gravel crunching under the tires, and for a moment I sat there gripping the steering wheel, headlights washing over the front office, because something felt off right away. Like the place wasn't abandoned exactly, but it wasn't alive either. Too still, too quiet. The rain hammering down on the roof of my car like nails. I finally got out and dashed across to the office. The bell above the door jingled, but the lobby was empty, smelling faintly of mildew and cigarettes, wallpaper curling at the edges. And then I saw him, a man behind the counter. He hadn't been there when I first walked in, I swear he wasn't. But now he stood perfectly still, smiling just a little too wide, his skin waxy like it had been pulled too tight. He asked me what brought me in, his voice calm but flat, and I muttered something about the storm, about needing a place to wait it out. He nodded and slid an old-fashioned key across the counter. The tag read, Room 6, his eyes never leaving mine like he was memorizing my face. I shoved the damp bills into his hand and hurried out. Before I could really think, the hallway leading to the rooms was dim, one of the overhead lights flickering every few seconds, buzzing in that sick way fluorescents do. The carpet damp under my shoes like it had soaked up years of spilled rain. Room 6 was halfway down, and when I unlocked it, the door groaned like something didn't want me to enter. The inside smelled like dust and copper, the sheets stiff, the furniture ancient, but it was dry, so I tossed my bag onto the chair and sat down on the bed, trying to shake the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. That's when I noticed the dresser, the top lined with framed photographs, all black and white, each one showing different guests, couples, families, lone travelers, all posed in front of the exact same room I was in, Room 6, their smiles strained, their eyes tired, and in every single one of them, tucked into the background, was the faint outline of the man at the front desk, younger in some photos, older in others, but always there, always watching. I picked one up, my fingers trembling, and that's when I heard the click. A shutter sound, crisp and undeniable. My head whipped around, but no one was in the room, only the faint smell of chemical film hanging in the air. My heart thudding. I opened the closet, checked under the bed. Nothing. But when I turned back, the photograph I'd been holding was different. It wasn't the family smiling anymore. It was me, sitting on the bed, holding the frame. My eyes wide with fear, I dropped it instantly, the glass cracking on the floor, and the sound must have carried, because from down the hall I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, pacing toward my door. I backed up until my shoulders hit the wall. The footsteps stopped just outside, silence hanging so thick I could hear my own pulse. Then a whisper seeped under the door. Soft, steady, don't look away. And the knob began to turn. The knob rattled once, then stopped, and I held my breath so tight I thought my chest would collapse. The silence after the whisper felt worse than the whisper itself. I didn't know whether to scream or run, or just pretend I wasn't there. But then the doorknob slowly eased back into place. Like whoever was on the other side wanted me to know they could come in anytime they wanted. They just chose not to. The footsteps retreated down the hallway, steady, almost dragging, until they faded away. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I sat on the bed with the lamp on, my eyes locked on the door, and every now and then I swore I heard faint scratches on the wall, like fingernails tracing the plaster. When the storm finally broke and the gray light of dawn slipped through the curtains, I bolted. I grabbed my bag, shoved everything inside without bothering to check, and yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, the buzzing fluorescence still flickering, but every door I passed on my way out had been cracked open just slightly, enough that shadows moved inside them. I didn't dare look. I kept my eyes fixed ahead until I reached the lobby. But when I got there, the desk was empty, no sign of the man. Only a stack of photographs on the counter, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all scattered like someone had been rifling through them. I didn't want to. I told myself not to, But my hand moved on its own. I lifted the first one and almost dropped it right away. It was me, standing in the hallway. Not 5 minutes ago, my head down, rushing past the cracked open doors. The second photo was me again, in the room, staring at the dresser in shock. The third was me asleep, my head tilted, mouth open, on the bed that I knew I hadn't slept on. Every single photo was me, from angles I couldn't explain. Some from above, some from corners of the room I knew I had checked. A sick realization spread through me. Whoever was behind that desk didn't just collect photographs of guests. They collected moments. They owned them, framed them, trapped them. And somehow, I had already become part of it. I bolted for the glass door, but froze when I saw the parking lot. Every single car out there, maybe 20 of them, were coated in a thick layer of dust, tires flat, windshields cracked, like they hadn't been moved in decades, except mine. My car gleamed wet from the rain, its engine still ticking. Out of place among the corpses, I sprinted for it, fumbling with the keys, throwing myself inside, slamming the locks, my heart racing, the motel shrinking in my rearview mirror as I tore back onto the highway. I didn't look back, not until I'd been driving for hours. But when I finally pulled into a rest stop to calm down, I noticed something that made my stomach turn. Tucked into the passenger seat of my car was a Polaroid, fresh. The chemical smell still strong. It showed me gripping the steering wheel, the motel sign glowing in the distance behind me. I threw it out the window, telling myself it was over, that I was gone. But when I reached into my glove box for a map, I found another photo, the same image, folded neatly inside, the whisper still in my head, "Don't look away, don't look away." I told myself I would never go back, that I'd forget it. But for weeks after I couldn't sleep, every night I woke with the sense that someone was in the room with me, standing just beyond the reach of the dark. I finally convinced myself I was paranoid. That exhaustion was twisting my head until last night, when I came home from work and found a stack of photographs waiting on my kitchen table. Dozens of them, showing me at work, on the subway, unlocking my apartment door. The door, all taken from angles that shouldn't have been possible. And at the very bottom of the pile was one last picture, my face frozen in shock, staring down at a stack of photographs, the exact moment I was living. Proof that the collector hadn't let me leave. He'd followed me. He was with me now, and the whispers were right. There's nowhere to run, because once he takes your picture, you don't belong to yourself anymore. You belong to him. I thought I could just move, change cities, start fresh. But photographs don't obey borders. They don't obey distance, they follow. And that's what I learned the hard way. Because no matter where I went, the stack kept growing. Sometimes tucked under my door, sometimes mailed without a return address, sometimes just waiting for me in places nobody should have been able to reach. Like my locked desk drawer at work. Every time I told myself I'd burn them, shred them, tear them up, and I did. I destroyed dozens, hundreds. But every time I woke up the next morning, the same images would be neatly stacked on the nightstand, like nothing had happened. Sometimes with new ones on top, proof that while I slept he'd been there, not only in my room, but inches from me, close enough to see the twitch of my eyes, the way my chest rose and fell. I bought cameras, alarms, locks, but they never caught anything, just static, black gaps, empty frames, like he wasn't just avoiding them, he was erasing himself from the very concept of being recorded, except when he wanted to be. And I realized soon that he didn't just collect moments, he curated them. He chose what I remembered, what I saw, what I was forced to relive over and over. I stopped leaving my apartment after the day I opened my office door and saw every inch of the walls plastered with photographs of me sitting at that very desk, writing the same report over and over, frozen in an endless loop. I'd screamed, torn them down, but underneath was another layer, older photos. Me as a kid, me in my parents' house, images I'd never even known existed. proving he hadn't found me that night at the motel. He'd been with me for years, waiting, cataloging. I'd tried to call my family, but every time I picked up the phone, the line was dead. Only the faint sound of shuffling paper on the other end, like someone turning through a photo album. I tried to run. I packed a bag and got on a bus to nowhere, but the seat beside me already had a Polaroid waiting, face down, and when I flipped it over, it was me on that bus, the camera angle from across the aisle, even though nobody was sitting there. I felt eyes on me the whole ride. Every bump of the road made me clutch the photo tighter until I finally tore it in half and tossed it out the window. But I already knew it didn't matter, because when I got off the bus at a random stop in a random town, there were more waiting, stuffed into my pockets, slid into my shoes, taped to the inside of my bag. I don't know how they got there. I don't know how he gets anywhere. I only know he's everywhere at once. Always behind the lens. The first time I saw him clearly was 2 weeks later. I'd been in a hotel again. This time a chain, bright lights, cameras everywhere, real people coming and going. I thought maybe it would help. Maybe he wouldn't follow me somewhere so exposed. But at 2 in the morning, I woke to the sound of a camera shutter. Faint, but undeniable. I turned on the light and saw nothing. But on the desk was a fresh photo. My own terrified face illuminated by the lamp I'd just switched on, meaning the picture had been taken a split second before I turned. And in the corner of the frame, just barely in focus, was him. A tall figure with no real features, only a smooth, pale oval where a face should be, holding an old camera that looked like it belonged in a museum. I stared until I couldn't breathe. Then, I threw the photo across the room. But when it landed, the image had changed. No longer me in the hotel bed, but me standing over the bed, staring at myself asleep, like he'd switched places with me, showing me the way he saw. I left right then, didn't even pack my bag. I ran barefoot out into the night, not even caring who saw, but nobody looked. Nobody reacted. Like I didn't even exist to them. Like the second he chose me, I stopped being part of the world. I wandered for hours before collapsing on a bench, trying to convince myself it was a nightmare. And when I woke the next morning, there was a stack of photographs in my lap. All of me sleeping on that bench, and in every single one, his pale, faceless head was tilted closer, closer, until the last photo was nothing but the camera lens filling the frame, the glass dark and endless. I think he wants me to understand something, that it's not about death, it's about possession, about turning me into an exhibit in some private gallery I'll never see. I've stopped fighting, stopped throwing the photos away. They're stacked all over the apartment now, in neat little towers that shift in the night. Sometimes I hear the click of his shutter, and I don't even flinch anymore. Sometimes I catch my reflection in the dark glass of the TV and swear I see his pale oval head beside mine. But the worst part came. Just last night when I found a new stack on my bed, fresh chemical scent still clinging, but these weren't of me. These were of people I knew, friends, co-workers, family, each caught in candid moments, some laughing, some eating, some sleeping, and in every single one of them I was in the background, standing just behind them, watching, smiling, sometimes holding a camera, sometimes not. And that's when I realized what he was doing. It wasn't just about collecting me. It was about making me part of his collection, part of his perspective. Like, he was teaching me how to take over his work, training me to be the one behind the lens. And I don't know how long I have before I stop being afraid and start becoming like him. Because sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel the weight of a camera in my hands. Old, heavy, familiar. And when I open them, I see flashes of other people's lives. Lives I haven't lived yet, but will. Lives I'll capture. Moments I'll steal. And somewhere in the distance, I hear his voice without words, telling me this is the way it's always been. The collector doesn't just choose his victims, he chooses his successors. I don't remember when I stopped sleeping. I don't even remember if I've slept at all these past few days, or if he's stolen that from me too. All I know is the photographs don't wait for me anymore. They arrive whether I'm awake or not. I'll be sitting at the kitchen table, and hear the faint crack of a Polaroid ejecting. And when I look down, there's already a fresh photo sliding out from beneath my hands. Sometimes it's still warm, the chemicals wet, the image slowly bleeding into shape, until I'm staring at something I haven't even done yet. I used to scream when that happened. I used to beg him to stop. But now I just watch. I wait. Because I know the picture's always right. It always comes true. Like the one I found yesterday of me standing at my window, arm raised, camera pressed to my face, and hours later, I found myself at that exact angle, unable to stop, unable to lower my arm, as if my body belonged to the photograph and not to me. And when the shutter clicked, it wasn't my camera, it was his. Heavy, ancient, wood and brass. The strap cold around my neck, even though I hadn't put it there. I don't know how to explain the way it felt. Not like holding an object, but like gripping a part of something alive. Something that had always been waiting for my hands. And when the flash went off, I didn't see the window anymore. I saw a dozen strangers' faces frozen in terror, wide-eyed, caught forever in the white explosion of light. I dropped the camera, and it was gone. No trace of it on the floor, only a new stack of photos waiting where it had been. A stack of strangers who now exist only in that frame, trapped like insects under glass. I wanted to run again, but I know now there's nowhere to run. There never was. The collector doesn't chase because he doesn't need to. He's already there, already behind you, already inside the moment you think you're living. He doesn't hunt, he harvests, he cultivates, and I think he's been cultivating me since I was a child. I've started remembering things I shouldn't. Faint flashes of him standing in the corner of my room when I was 6, of hearing a shudder in the middle of the night, of waking to find photographs tucked into my toys. How did I forget all of that? How did I convince myself he began at the motel? Maybe because he wanted me to forget until I was ready. Maybe because this isn't about being taken, but about being prepared, trained, sculpted into what he needs. The last stack of photos proved that. They weren't of me or strangers. They were of him, the collector himself, faceless, but framed in ways that made sense, like portraits. Like he wanted me to study his posture, his angles, his silence. And the final photo in the stack was different. It was me. Not as I am now, but dressed in his long, dark coat, my face blurred into pale nothing, holding his camera at my chest, and behind me was a wall covered in thousands of photographs. Not his, mine. Every face I'd ever known trapped behind the glass of that lens. I think that was his gift to me, or maybe his command. I've been hearing the clicks more often now, even when I'm not holding it. Faint, mechanical snaps echoing inside my skull. And sometimes when I blink, the world freezes just for an instant. And when it moves again, people are slightly different. Their eyes a little wider, their smiles broken. Like they know they've been captured, but can't remember when. I've stopped leaving this apartment. Not because I'm afraid of him, but because I'm afraid of myself. Afraid that if I see anyone I care about, I won't be able to stop my finger from pressing down on the shutter. I don't even see anymore. It's just instinct. Muscle memory that isn't mine, but his. But even hiding here hasn't helped. Tonight I found a new stack on the bed, thicker than any before. And when I started flipping through them, I saw you, yes you, sitting there reading this. Your face illuminated by a screen, your eyes tracing each word, your expression shifting from curiosity to unease to dread. And in the corner of every frame I could see me, or maybe him. It doesn't matter anymore. Standing just behind you, the lens aimed at the back of your head, and the last photo wasn't of you at all. It was of me, smiling for the first time, holding the camera steady, the flash reflecting in my empty face. And I think that means it's already done. I think that means I'm no longer the subject, I'm the collector now. And the next photograph you see might not be one you find, it might be one I take. The moment your eyes meet mine, The instant your life becomes part of the gallery. And when it happens, you'll understand there's no escape. There never was. Because the lens doesn't capture life, it replaces it. And the longer you stare at this, the more you'll hear it too. The faint click just behind your ear, the sound of me saving you for later.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more horror tales.
I was driving through a stretch of back roads late one evening, trying to shave some time off my route home. The GPS had glitched earlier, flickering on and off, rerouting me over and over until it eventually just froze. And by then I was too deep into the woods to turn back. So I just followed the cracked asphalt that wound between the trees, and it was just past midnight when I saw the sign, a bent, rusted road marker, half swallowed by ivy, letters faded but still legible under my headlights. It said, "Welcome to Ashwood, population 1,482. And the thing is, I'd never heard of Ashwood in my life. I grew up in this state, I've driven through almost every little podunk town and backroad crossroad there is, but that name meant nothing to me. Still, the gas gauge was edging toward empty, and the idea of finding a station kept me moving forward without questioning it too much. The road curved, and then like a trick of the dark, the town was just there. A main street stretched out before me, lined with old brick buildings, neon signs flickering in the night. But the moment I rolled in, I knew something was wrong. There were lights on in the shops, lamps glowing in windows, but not a single person on the sidewalks, not a car moving, not even the faint noise of nightlife. Just silence. The kind of silence that makes you feel like you've stepped inside a photograph. I pulled into a gas station, an old Sinclair with peeling paint, the dinosaur logo bleached almost white. The pump clicked when I lifted the handle, but nothing came out. I tapped it, squeezed again, nothing. That's when I noticed the price. $2 a gallon frozen on the sign, and my stomach sank because it hadn't been that price in years. I went inside, hoping to find someone. The bell above the door rang, but no clerk appeared. The shelves were stocked with dusty cans and faded packaging, brands I didn't recognize. The air smelled stale, like mildew, mixed with something faintly metallic. "Hello?" I called out. My voice echoed in a way it shouldn't have in such a small space. That's when I saw it at the far end of the store behind the counter. A shape not moving, not human. It looked like a mannequin dressed in a clerk's uniform, its head tilted down as though frozen mid-breath. And on the counter in front of it was a Polaroid picture. I picked it up with shaking hands and felt my stomach twist when I saw what it was. It was me, standing at the gas pump outside, and the photo was still warm. I dropped the photo like it burned me, the image fluttering to the floor as I stumbled back. The mannequin, or whatever it was, didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't even twitch. But I could swear the angle of its head was different now, tilted up just enough that I felt its eyeless face was fixed on me. I bolted out of the store and back to my car, fumbling the keys, my hands slick with sweat. When I finally jammed them into the ignition, the engine sputtered but wouldn't catch. I kept turning it, whispering, "Come on, come on, come on," under my breath. Finally, it roared to life, and I slammed it into reverse, peeling out of the lot. I didn't even look back at the station, I just drove. The streets were still lit up, but every window I passed showed frozen scenes, diners with plates of food uneaten on the tables, a bar with glasses raised mid-toast. People standing there like statues, caught in some sick game of musical chairs. All of them unmoving, but their eyes following me. I swear to God, their eyes turned as I passed, reflecting in the glass like oil. I floored it down Main Street until the pavement crumbled into dirt at the edge of town, the headlights bouncing across trees as I hit the brakes hard. The road just ended in a wall of woods. No continuation, no highway sign, nothing. Just forest swallowing everything. I spun the car around and drove back the way I came. But the strangest thing was, there was no panic in the air. It was almost like the town wanted me to keep circling. The lights steady, the figures frozen, waiting. I pulled over, breathing hard, trying to think. That's when I saw a payphone on the corner, glowing faintly in the dark. The booth looked freshly clean, like it was the only real thing in the whole town. I don't know why, but I ran to it, shoved the door closed, and picked up the receiver. There was a dial tone, My hand shook as I punched in my brother's number. It rang once, twice. Then someone answered, but it wasn't him. It was my voice. Hollow, warped, like a recording. And it said, "Don't hang up. They know you're here." I dropped the phone, heart hammering, the glass walls of the booth fogging with each shallow breath. When I looked up, the figures from the diner were no longer inside. The bar was empty. The sidewalks were filling with shapes that hadn't been there before. Dozens of them standing under the street lamps, all turned toward me, motionless, but somehow closer every time I blinked. And in their hands, each of them was holding a Polaroid. Flashes of white, catching the light, as if they'd all just been taken. I didn't need to see them to know every single one was of me. I slammed the phone booth door open and stumbled out into the street. The air felt thicker now, like I was breathing through gauze. Every shadow stretched too long and clung to the pavement like tar. I ran back to my car, but the doors were already locked, all four of them. The key's still in my pocket, but the locks wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I pulled, I didn't even hear myself scream. I just backed away. The crowd of figures wasn't frozen anymore. They were stepping off the sidewalks, their shoes scraping the asphalt like nails on slate, their heads jerking slightly with each step, none of them blinking, all of them holding those Polaroids out in front of them, shaking slightly in their hands like they'd just developed. I turned and bolted down an alley, my shoes slapping the wet concrete, the smell of damp brick and rust choking my nose. The further I went, the narrower the alley got until the walls brushed my shoulders. I thought it was a dead end, but then the bricks shifted, sliding open like a mouth, and I didn't even hesitate. I ran through, finding myself in what looked like a basement lit by a single swinging bulb. The walls were lined with photographs tacked in uneven rows, thousands of them. All Polaroids, all of me, my face at different angles, some from today, some from years ago. One of me as a child holding my mom's hand outside our old house. One of me asleep in bed last month. One of me opening the fridge in my apartment just 2 nights ago. My skin crawled as I backed into the center of the room, the bulb above buzzing harder, the photographs rustling like they were breathing. I shouted, "Who's doing this?" And the sound didn't echo, it just sank into the walls. That's when the far side of the room rippled, the photographs peeling back to reveal a mirror. But it wasn't me in the reflection. It was me from behind, the back of my head, my shoulders. And as I watched it lifted its hand and waved slowly, my stomach dropped. I turned around, but no one was there. When I looked back at the mirror again, the version of me was walking forward, closer to the glass, smiling with a mouth full of too many teeth. Then the bulb popped, plunging me into dark. I fumbled for my phone, but when the screen lit up, it wasn't my lock screen photo. It was a live feed of the basement itself, the exact room I was standing in. Only now I could see shapes moving along the edges, tall and thin, sliding against the walls with jerky, insect-like motions. Every time I turned my phone to the left or right, the shapes were gone, but in the feed they were still there, closer, closer, until one of them leaned into the glow of the screen, and its face wasn't a face at all. It was a Polaroid held where its head should be. A Polaroid of me, staring back into the phone, eyes wide, mouth open like I was screaming. Though I hadn't yet made a sound, I dropped the phone and ran blindly, hitting the wall, scraping my arms as I felt for another exit, a door, anything. My palms hit cold metal, and I shoved it open, stumbling out into daylight, blinding daylight. But when my eyes adjusted, I wasn't outside. I was standing in my own apartment, everything in the exact place I'd left it. My jacket slung over the couch, dishes in the sink. The only difference was every surface was covered in Polaroids, taped, stacked, layered. Every single one of me in moments I couldn't remember. I stood frozen in my own apartment, the air thick with the chemical reek of old film and curling photo paper, Polaroids taped over the window so no light came in except the thin, jaundiced glow of the hallway spilling under the door. Every wall, every surface, buried in snapshots of me. Versions of me that looked drained, pale, sometimes smiling too wide, sometimes looking straight past the camera like I knew something I shouldn't. I reached for one at random, peeling it from the wall, and my stomach lurched because it was dated tomorrow. A timestamp in the corner burned into the border. And in the picture, I was lying face down in my bed, shirt ripped, my back covered in black, ink-like symbols. I didn't recognize them. I dropped it instantly and fluttered down with a sound too heavy for just a photograph. That's when I heard the soft whir click behind me, the unmistakable sound of a Polaroid camera spitting out a photo. I spun around, but nothing was there, no camera, just the faint hiss of film processing in the air. Then, slowly, a new picture slid out from the wall itself, like the plaster was a slot machine. It fell to the carpet face down. I didn't want to pick it up, but my hands moved on their own. When I flipped it over, my blood ran cold. It was me, standing exactly where I was now, holding the exact same photograph. Behind me in the frame was a tall silhouette, stretched, its head bowed, but its arms far too long, fingertips almost dragging the floor. I turned in panic, and of course nothing was there. I started tearing the Polaroids down, ripping them in handfuls, but behind each layer was just more. Hundreds, thousands. The deeper I pulled, the more the walls bled with them, until the drywall wasn't even visible anymore. Just endless stacks of photographs, layered like scales. I ran to the door and yanked it open, desperate to get into the hallway. But the hallway wasn't there. It was that street again, the one in Ashwood where this all began. Frozen figures lining the sidewalks, still holding their Polaroids, their heads turning in unison toward me with the sound of creaking wood. My apartment door slammed shut behind me with such force it rattled the bones in my chest. I stumbled forward, shouting at them to stay back. But they didn't move, they just watched, until I noticed their Polaroids were changing, the blank squares filling in right there in their hands, developing images. And when I got close enough to see, every single one was me. But not present me, not past me either. Each photo showed me in a different form of death. Drowned, hanging, burned, gutted. Each picture darker than the last. My legs buckled, but I forced myself into a run. Barreling down the frozen street, the sound of shutters clicking around me. Whir, click, whir, click, whir, click. Cameras snapping in every window, every shadow. I couldn't outrun it. I burst into another alley, and suddenly I wasn't in the street anymore. I was back in the elevator, the mirrored walls reflecting 100 versions of me. Some smiling, some weeping, some banging their fists against the glass. The elevator was moving, but the numbers above the door weren't floors anymore. They were dates. Every day of my life scrolling past, slowing when it reached today, and then one more date, tomorrow's, before the numbers froze. The elevator jolted and the door slid open. Behind them wasn't the lobby, wasn't the street, wasn't anything I recognized. It was a vast black space, lined with endless filing cabinets, and on every drawer was a Polaroid taped neatly to the front. Rows and rows of me cataloged like artifacts. My chest tightened, my knees threatening to give out. Then I saw something move at the far end, a figure gliding between the cabinets, holding a camera at its chest. Raising it slowly, the flash fired, and in the instant of blinding white, I realized what was happening. These things weren't following me. They weren't tormenting me randomly. They were archiving me, documenting every second of my existence, preserving every fear, every mistake, every failure, and now they were showing me the end of the collection, my final snapshot. The shutter clicked one last time, and the last thing I saw before the dark swallowed me was the photograph sliding out into its hand, shaking, the image already developing. And the picture was me, right here, right now, telling you this story.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more horror tales.
I never believed in haunted places, not really, at least not in the kind of way people tell stories about on the internet or on late-night radio shows. Old buildings creak, they settle, they echo in weird ways that play tricks on your mind. I always figured it was just that, shadows and sound where you didn't expect them, nothing more. But the night this happened to me, I stopped trying to explain it away. I worked in this office building downtown, nothing fancy, just one of those brick and stone relics from the early 1900s that somehow survived the city, tearing itself down and rebuilding 100 times. It had one of those lobbies with faded marble tiles and a brass mail chute that hadn't worked since the 70s, and an elevator that always groaned when you got in, like it resented carrying people anymore. The kind of building that smelled like dust and stale paper, no matter how much they cleaned it. I'd been staying late that week, trying to finish up a project before the end of the quarter. Most nights I was the only one still there after 9. Everyone else cleared out at 5 or 6, but me, I was a creature of bad habits. Coffee, headphones, and empty silence kept me going when I should have been home asleep. That night was no different. Around 11:30, I finally decided to call it quits. My brain was fried, my eyes hurt, and the office was so quiet I could hear the old pipes clanking behind the walls. I packed up my laptop, shut everything down, and headed for the elevator. I hated taking the stairs. 10 flights down always felt like an eternity when you were exhausted, so I pressed the call button, heard the cables groan somewhere above me, and waited. When the doors opened, I stepped inside, hit the button for the lobby, and leaned against the wall, rubbing my eyes. The elevator rattled as it started down. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was that it stopped almost immediately. I frowned, thinking maybe someone else had called it from another floor. But when the doors slid open, what I saw made me freeze. It wasn't any floor I recognized. The walls outside were covered in old, peeling wallpaper, the kind you'd see in a house that hadn't been lived in for decades, yellowed and curling at the edges. The lights overhead flickered dimly, buzzing like they were about to burn out, and the hallway stretched in both directions longer than it should have, way longer than the building was even wide. And the worst part, none of the floor numbers matched. The little display above the elevator doors, the one that always told you where you were, was blank. Just dark. No number at all. I remember my first thought was that I must have hit the wrong button. Maybe ended up on one of those maintenance floors or something. But there was no M button, no service floor, nothing like that in this building. Just lobby, 1 through 10. That was it. I knew it as well as I knew the back of my hand, and yet here I was, staring into a hallway that shouldn't exist. I should have just hit close doors and gone home. I should have ignored it. But my curiosity got the better of me. I stepped out. The carpet under my feet was threadbare and smelled faintly of mildew, like it had been damp for a long time. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting the doors to shut on me, but they stayed open, waiting. I took a few steps down the hall. There were doors on both sides, spaced evenly, every single one of them identical. Dark wood, tarnished brass handles, numbers that were worn almost completely away. I leaned closer to it, squinting, and thought I saw a 3 carved into the metal, but it was scratched so badly it could have been anything. I don't know why I reached out and tried the handle. Some stupid, reckless instinct, I guess. It didn't turn, none of them did. I tried 3 in a row, each locked tight, each colder to the touch than the last, like the metal had been left outside in winter. I was about to turn back when I heard it. Faint, but clear enough to stop me dead in my tracks. Footsteps, coming from down the hallway, slow, deliberate, echoing against the wallpapered walls. I froze, listening. At first I thought maybe it was security, though I'd never seen them on this floor before, never even heard of them patrolling up here. But the longer I listened, the more wrong it felt. Whoever it was, they weren't walking toward me in a straight line. The sound shifted, like they were weaving back and forth, dragging one foot slightly, like something was off about their gait. And then, without warning, every light in that hallway flickered once, twice, and went out. For a few seconds, I was standing in pitch black, heart pounding, breath loud in my ears. The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Then, with a faint hum, the lights buzzed back to life. The hallway was empty. No one there, no shadows, no movement, nothing. Just the same peeling wallpaper, the same endless row of locked doors. My stomach turned, and I finally got smart enough to back up toward the elevator. Only when I glanced over my shoulder, the open doors I'd left behind me were gone. The elevator wasn't there anymore. I was staring at another stretch of hallway, just as long and just as wrong as the first. I don't think I've ever known fear like the kind that slammed into me when I turned and realized the elevator was gone. Just gone. 1 second it had been right there behind me, its brass doors yawning open like a lifeline back to normalcy. and the next it had vanished, replaced by more of that impossible hallway. I stood there frozen, my brain trying to stitch together some kind of explanation. Hallways don't just replace elevators. Space doesn't just rearrange itself. But no matter how long I stared, that elevator wasn't coming back. My heart hammered so hard in my chest, I thought I was going to pass out. I remember whispering to myself, "This isn't real. It's just a dream. You're exhausted. You fell asleep at your desk. That's all it is." I even pinched my arm, hard enough to make myself yelp. The pain was sharp and very, very real. And when I looked down the hallway again, it was still there, stretching endlessly in both directions. The air felt heavier now, like it was pressing against my skin, damp and close, making it harder to breathe. I turned left first, picking a direction at random, walking fast but trying not to outright sprint, because some part of me knew running would make it worse. Every door I passed was the same. Dark wood, brass handle, almost no number left to read. I tried a few again, jiggling the handles, pulling hard, even kicking one. But none of them gave. Locked tight. It didn't make sense. What was the point of all these doors if none of them opened? And then I heard it again. That dragging step. Slow. Closer this time. My stomach dropped. I spun around, looking down the hall I'd just walked, but it was empty. I couldn't see anyone, but the sound kept coming, echoing faintly, growing clearer, like it was following just a little ways behind me, but never close enough to see. I kept moving faster now, trying door after door, whispering under my breath like an idiot. Come on, just open. Please open." And finally, one did. The handle turned suddenly in my hand. The door creaked inward on stiff hinges, and I stumbled inside without even looking first. I slammed it shut behind me and pressed my back against it, gasping. The room I found myself in was wrong. Like everything else on that floor, it didn't belong. It looked like a hotel room, but not one anyone would actually stay in. The wallpaper was the same faded, peeling mess, the carpet a threadbare brown, and the bed in the center sagged in the middle like something heavy had been lying there for decades. There was a dresser against the far wall, with a cracked mirror above it, and when I glanced at it, I froze. My reflection was staring back at me, but not in sync. When I lifted my hand, it didn't. When I tilted my head, it stayed still, its face blank, its eyes glassy. It just stood there, staring at me until, after a long moment, it slowly smiled. My knees almost gave out. I backed away from the dresser, not daring to take my eyes off the mirror, muttering, "No, no, no, no." The smile widened, impossibly wide, stretching in a way no human face should. And then, just like that, the glass cracked straight down the middle with a sharp, splintering sound. I flinched, covering my face, but the mirror didn't shatter further. It just sat there, split down the center, my reflection still smiling on one side, the other warped and fractured. I wanted to get out. I needed to. But when I turned back to the door I'd come through, it wasn't there anymore. The wall was solid. No handle, no hinges, nothing. Just more peeling wallpaper. I staggered forward, running my hands over the wall, slamming my fist against it. But it was seamless. The door had vanished, trapped. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. I spun back toward the room, half expecting the reflection to have climbed out of the mirror, but the dresser was gone too. In its place was another door, not the same one I'd come through. This one was taller, thinner, painted an ugly shade of green, and I swear I could hear something breathing on the other side. I don't know how long I stood there staring at it, waiting for it to open, my body frozen between running and collapsing. But it never opened, not on its own. And as much as every part of me screamed not to touch it, I knew it was my only chance, my only way forward, my only way out. So I reached out, my hand trembling so badly I could barely get my fingers around the knob, and I turned it. The hinges shrieked as the door swung inward. and a rush of cold air blasted over me. Beyond it was another hallway, darker than the last, narrower, with the walls pressed closer together like it was forcing me down a throat. I took one step in, and that's when I heard it again. Those footsteps. Not behind me this time, ahead, waiting. The second I stepped into that narrow hallway, I regretted it. It felt like the walls themselves were closing in on me, as if the building wanted to swallow me whole. The air was colder here, biting at my skin, and with every breath I exhaled, I saw faint white mist. That made no sense. This was supposed to be indoors, but it was as if I had stepped into some other place entirely. My shoes scraped against the floor, each sound bouncing back and forth between the walls, until it felt like I was walking inside the body of some great beast, the sound of my movement echoing in its ribs. And then came the footsteps again. Slow, dragging, measured. I froze mid-step, the hairs on my arms standing on end. It wasn't behind me. It was ahead. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the reach of my sight. I remember whispering into the air, not even knowing why I did it. I hear you. My voice came back to me, warped and hollow, as though the hallway had swallowed it and spat out something less human. My instincts told me to turn around, to run, to hammer my fists against the wall where the green door had been. But when I glanced over my shoulder, the door was gone, sealed over by more of that endless wallpaper, like it had never existed. My way out was gone. The only path was forward, toward whatever was waiting in the dark. So I started walking, each step slow, careful, my ears straining against the silence. The footsteps had stopped when I stopped, but as I moved again, so did they, always keeping the same distance ahead, like something was pacing me. I don't know how long I walked. Time seemed to bend and stretch in that place. Minutes, hours, it all blurred. The hallway never ended. The only change was the occasional door, just like the ones I'd seen before. Heavy wood, brass handle, no readable number. And just like before, everyone I tried was locked. My panic grew with every handle that refused to turn. It was like the place was mocking me. At one point, after trying a door and failing, I pressed my forehead against it, whispering, "Please, please just open." And I swear to God, I felt something on the other side press back. A cold spot against the wood, shaped like a hand. My knees buckled, and I pushed away from the door so hard I nearly fell over. That's when I saw it for the first time. Not clearly, not in any way that made sense, but I saw movement in the darkness ahead. A shadow against shadows, long and twisted, stretched wrong, like a figure walking on joints that weren't meant to bend that way. It didn't move smoothly. It jerked, paused, then dragged itself forward again, one leg scraping against the floor. My stomach dropped, and every instinct screamed at me to run, but the hallway gave me no choice. Forward or nothing. So I moved, trying to keep as quiet as I could, though the floor creaked under my weight. The figure never sped up, never slowed down, always just ahead, never letting me catch it, never letting me fall behind. I realized after a while that it wanted me to follow. That thought sat like a stone in my gut. I don't know how long I was stuck in that nightmare march. My legs ached, my throat was dry, my mind buzzing with exhaustion and terror. But eventually, the figure stopped, dead still in the darkness ahead. My heart thudded against my ribs as I crept closer, every step a battle between my fear and the dread of what would happen if I didn't move at all. And then, without warning, the lights in the hallway flickered. For the first time since I'd entered, the darkness peeled back, just for an instant, and I saw it. I don't even know how to describe what I saw without feeling sick. It was tall, impossibly tall, its head brushing the ceiling, its limbs long and thin like scaffolding poles, covered in skin too loose for the bones beneath. Its face, or what passed for a face, was a pale oval, featureless except for a mouth that stretched all the way across, lips cracked and dry, grinning wide enough to split its head in two. When the light flickered back out, I was left in the dark again. But that image burned itself into my mind so completely, I can still see it when I close my eyes. I stood frozen, shaking, praying it hadn't seen me, praying it was just some hallucination from lack of sleep or hunger or whatever the hell was happening to me. But then it spoke. Its voice wasn't a voice. It was the sound of doors opening and closing, of hinges groaning, of wood splintering. It whispered a single word: forward. My legs moved before my brain could stop them. I was walking again, almost running, driven by some compulsion I couldn't fight. Every door I passed seemed to rattle in its frame as I went by, like something inside wanted to get out. The sound grew louder, a chorus of shaking handles, thudding, fists cracking wood, until the hallway was filled with the noise of all those unseen things trying to claw their way through. I screamed, covering my ears, but it didn't help. The sound was inside my head as much as outside. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Silence. Crushing, absolute silence. I was standing in front of a single door, different from the rest. This one was white, pristine, clean, like it didn't belong in this decaying place. My hand shook as I reached for the knob. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to know what was on the other side. But behind me in the dark, I could hear it. Breathing. Close. Waiting. I had no choice. I turned the knob, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. And what I found there made me wish I'd stayed in the hallway with that thing. The door shut behind me with a soft click, like a coffin lid closing. I didn't even touch it. Something unseen sealed me in. The silence that followed was suffocating. At first I thought I was standing in just another empty room, but then my eyes adjusted and I realized where I was. It looked exactly like my old bedroom. Not the one I live in now, but the one from when I was a kid. Same peeling wallpaper, same twin bed shoved against the corner, the same dresser with one missing handle. I felt dizzy staring at it, like the room itself had been pulled straight from my memories. But then I saw the difference. On the dresser, where I remembered keeping my baseball cards and action figures, there were photographs, dozens of them, arranged neatly in frames, each one facing outward. I crept closer, my gut twisting tighter with every step, because I already knew what I was going to see. They were all of me. Not family portraits, not casual snapshots, just me, standing alone in random places. Some of them were from when I was younger, photos I recognized. But most of them weren't. Most of them showed me in places I had never been. Walking down a street at night, sitting in a diner booth, standing on a bus I'd never taken. Even one of me asleep, mouth slightly open, head turned on a pillow that wasn't mine. And each photo had one thing in common: a shadow. Always in the background, always blurred, but unmistakable. Tall, thin, watching. I staggered back from the dresser, bile rising in my throat. My voice shook as I whispered, "What the hell is this?" That's when the lights in the room dimmed, just slightly. Like the air itself grew heavier. The photos rattled in their frames. And then I heard it again. The voice that wasn't a voice. The sound of doors opening, closing, splintering. But this time, it wasn't just one word. It said, "You belong here." I stumbled back toward the door I'd come through, fumbling at the knob, but it wouldn't turn. No matter how hard I pulled, it was sealed shut. Behind me, the bed creaked, the sound of weight pressing down on it. I didn't want to look. Every instinct screamed not to look, but I did. And I saw myself. I swear to you, sitting on the bed, staring at me with dead, empty eyes. It was me. Same face, same body, same clothes I was wearing that very moment, but its skin was pale, stretched thin, its smile too wide, too knowing. It raised a hand, and when it moved, I felt my own arm twitch, like my body wanted to obey. I whispered, "No, no, that's not me, that's not me." The thing on the bed tilted its head the way a curious animal might. Then it spoke, in my voice, perfectly. "I've been waiting." I froze, my own voice coming out of something that wasn't me, hearing it echo off the walls. It broke something in me. My mind screamed to deny it, but my body wouldn't move. It stood up slowly, fluidly, like its joints worked better than mine. And with every step it took toward me, I felt weaker, like my strength was draining into the floor. My legs buckled and I dropped to my knees, gasping, unable to fight. It crouched down in front of me, our faces inches apart. Up close, I could see the cracks in its skin, like porcelain stretched too thin. Its grin split wider until the corners of its mouth tore. Bloodless, silent tears in its face. And then it whispered something only I could hear. Something so quiet, so intimate, I felt it burn into my skull. You'll forget who you were, but we won't forget you. The lights went out. For a long time, there was nothing but blackness and that suffocating weight pressing down on me. When I came to, I was lying on the floor of the hotel lobby. The clerk was gone. The place was silent. The front doors wide open. I ran out without looking back, straight into the street, choking on sobs. I don't know how I made it home. I don't remember driving. All I remember is stumbling into my apartment, locking the door, curling into a ball, and shaking until morning. That should have been the end of it. I should have been free once I got away. But I wasn't. Because even now, weeks later, things aren't right. I keep finding photos, not in frames, not on dressers, just tucked into strange places. My fridge, my desk, even once under my pillow. And in every single one of them, I look just a little bit different. The smile is a little wider, the eyes are a little emptier. And last night, I woke up to the sound of my own voice whispering from the corner of the room. It said, "You belong here." And when I turned on the light, I swear I saw myself standing there in the dark, smiling.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more horror tales.